Hello, everyone. On this day, February 17th, 2026, many of us are waking up to hear the disheartening news of our beloved Reverend Jesse Jackson passing away overnight in his sleep. I watched this morning my own Seattle Como 4 News iteration after iteration say he died of a rare brain disease. If you know me, immediately I was looking that up. Then I watched Good Morning America say absolutely nothing at all, nothing about his cause of death. And I get it now that I looked at it because it should not be as hard as it is currently to describe his condition. The medical community and their terminology is not catching up and kind of making this a quagmire of diseases to understand. So I would like to give you my take on it. And quickly, the quick synopsis here is that he died of a disease similar to Alzheimer's disease, but instead of affecting his learning and memory areas, instead of having the symptoms manifest that are like forgetting the name of your wife or forgetting where you are, he instead had the same circuitry malfunctions that caused that. He had that in motor areas. So let's talk more about this. So his condition, finally, he got a diagnosis of progressive supranuclear palsy, and I know that's a mouthful, but basically that means progressive means it's a disease. It's something getting worse over time. Supranuclear tells us where the disease manifests. This dark area on the left here, this is the supranuclear motor regions. That sit right above or part of the thalamus, and they control a lot of your just core bodily motor behaviors. This includes your facial expressions because of all the hundreds of different muscles that are involved in just keeping your face to look like you and to have your emotions. So people with this disorder, their faces can start to look weird, like they're expressing emotions, but it's really that they've lost control of these motor areas. The cerebellum's also here, which is fine motor movement stuff. Palsy in this word just describes the motor aspect of it that is affecting his outwardly expression of his behavior. Now, it's often misdiagnosed as Parkinson's disease because of these motor symptoms, but it is not Parkinson's disease. It is actually harmful to call this disease Parkinson's disease because the treatment options that work for Parkinson's disease have little to no efficacy in progressive supranuclear palsy. Now, here I'm showing you some screenshots from the actual website of the American Parkinson's Disease Association. I provide the link. I provide the link below to this website. It's actually a really good article. I commend them on writing it up because they go into some pretty good detail about the difference between Parkinson's disease and PSP, which I'm kind of paraphrasing here. But I want to show you that in 2017, Reverend Jesse Jackson announced he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Now, I'm going to assume that because this article is released in November 19th, 2025, that for somewhere, definitely over 5 years, if not that full 8 years, him and his family were dealing with being misdiagnosed and going through treatment regimens that were aimed at treating Parkinson's disease. And I can't imagine how hard that was for that long to go through different treatment option after treatment option to see specialist after specialist. And most of those treatment options probably were not working. They were having little to no success, and his disease was probably getting worse and worse. And my sympathy and condolences goes huge to his family and for what they probably had to deal with being just thrown around the ringer of the system, only to late last year finally get the real diagnosis, and then he dies a few months later when it was far too late. There are clinical tests that you can do to distinguish the Parkinson's disease motor features and disturbances from the PSP ones, but you have to have a knowledgeable medical professional that is very aware of that and looking out for it. And I'm Um, and for these reasons of the uncertainty of these conditions, just how much it's hard to treat these and to even talk about them in the news, apparently, I really hope that his family allows medical community to do histology on his brain, because it's going to be really important to be able to look inside and see the degree of what we call the tau burden, the amount of plaques and how many of them are in what areas. That's actually going to help us a lot in the medical community continue to shine light on these diseases and try to help fight them. So I hope that his brain will be allowed to go through histology, but I understand there are a lot of reasons that sometimes people just want to be done with it and for their loved ones to be put away and not have their brain cut up. But we can learn a lot from it if they allow him to. Now, the most parsimonious way the news stations could have described his disease, his condition, would have been neurodegenerative disease. Neurons in the brain, something in the central nervous system. Degenerative, being destroyed, dying. Neurodegenerative disease is the best way to collectively call all of these diseases that are Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's disease. This is how we refer to them in the field. I really hope we can, as a society, start to use this word, because I'm finding that it's not a very common word, but it is the most simplest and easiest word to describe somebody in old age having their brain destroyed in certain ways that causes them to sadly kind of erode as a person, without having to just not talk about it at all. So the two big types of neurodegenerative diseases I would like to talk about are synucleinopathies and tauopathies. This is super important because this is where I get the right to say that he passed of a condition that is similar to Alzheimer's disease. Okay? Synucleinopathies are a result of this protein called alpha-synuclein. And this protein does normal things in your body and your cells, but it sometimes gets mutations and misfolds, and it aggregates. So aggregates means that you get a whole, say you get like 100 of these things that are all aggregating. And whereas I can't see one of these proteins by themselves normally, you can start to see in histology a whole plaque of these things start to develop, the aggregates of them. And they get outside of the cell and they start doing things like destroying your neurons and preventing them from doing what your neurons should be doing naturally. Tauopathies are the result of the abnormal aggregation of the protein tau. And tau is also does normal things in your body. Here, these little red squiggly lines are the tau proteins, and they help maintain the structure of this bigger blue thing, which is a microtubule. And these microtubules are basically these filaments, these really important pieces of the structure of neurons on the inside that help them traffic cargo from one end of the neuron to the other end of the neuron. But in tauopathies, like Alzheimer's disease, these tau proteins start to aggregate outside of the cell and inside the cell, and again, gonna come up features of them. The most common synucleinopathies are Parkinson's disease, Lewy body dementia, multiple system atrophy, pure autonomic failure. There's a whole list of them, and I know these very well because this is what we studied in my lab for quite a while. We were injecting alpha-synuclein proteins into animals to try to create a more naturalistic Parkinson's model. Tauopathies, Alzheimer's disease is one of them. Progressive Supranuclear Palsy, PSP, what Jesse Jackson had. Cortical basal degeneration, frontal temporal lobal degeneration. There's a whole range of them, okay? So this is where I get to say that the easiest way to understand what he had was a tauopathy, something like Alzheimer's disease, but instead of affecting learning and memory areas of the brain, it affected motor control areas of the brain, okay? In all of these cases, no matter where they start, when the degeneration gets widespread enough, it doesn't matter where it started because it's just starting to affect a broad range of things all over your body, and it's literally affecting so many systems that the root cause of it almost doesn't matter at that point. But as you can see, Parkinson's disease on the left side, it has a totally different protein that we think's creating it, causing it. Um, these spread differently in the brain, right? This goes to a lot of the dopamine area, substantia nigra. And again, a lot of the things that work over here on this side don't help the diseases on this side. So we should spread some knowledge about it. Thanks, everybody.